It's time to give you some updated Dynasty tight end rankings.
That's right, baby.
Lots happened this offseason, so why don't we all get on the same page? Do us a massive favor. Go ahead and drop a like to show some love. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content, because, yeah, we're getting closer to the season, but Dynasty doesn't stop, okay?
Still going.
We're still going to be going strong on the Dynasty channel. And I want you to comment down below right now the most disrespected tight end in all of Dynasty football. I want to know who it is. But just before we hop in, do you want my rankings, Badake's rankings, all the rankings and articles from your favorite content creators on YouTube? Then go ahead and use our code LAND, L-A-N-D. There's a link in the description that will take you right there. If you use our code, you'll get 30% off your membership. And if you choose that Mother Flocker tier, not only are you going to get all that, but you will also get a live breakdown of your Dynasty team.
That's right.
From us here at Dynasty Land. Okay, Badake, we have 5 tiers that we are going to be breaking these tight ends into. My 5 tiers holds about 19 tight ends. So lots of conversations to be had. How many do you have in your 5?
I have like
tiers?
16, 17. I mean,
okay.
We can stretch it up to 19 depending on who we want to talk about, you know.
All right, so let's begin then. In the 5th tier, who have you got in this 5th tier?
Yeah, so my first guy, I guess my last guy in this tier would definitely be Darren Waller at the moment. You may not have him in here. Actually,
I have him a tier higher, actually.
You have him a tier higher, okay. And the only reason why I have him a tier lower is because I think there are question marks moving forward.
Okay.
The question marks on the contract when he first got signed, it was this year and next year, and they have a potential out after this 23 season. So if he doesn't stay healthy, if he's not this guy that we all expect him to be, then I can really see the Giants moving forward from Darren Waller. And what, he's 31, 32 years old. Around,
he's 30 at the moment.
30, okay, so 30 at the moment. And I can definitely see them moving on from him. They do have Daniel Bellinger, so I'm skeptical. I can see the pathway of them maybe extending him for another 3 years, hypothetically, on whatever contract they want to bring him on. But if he doesn't perform this year, then I can see them, once again, moving on.
Let's leave that conversation for the end of this tier, and we'll talk about that at the end, because I'll make some counterpoints. But who else do you have in this tier 5 then?
Sure. I also have Cole Kmet in this tier.
Yeah, not a tight end that I think either of us want to just leave for dead. You know,
exactly.
It was an unfortunate year last year. If I'm not mistaken, one of my guys, correct?
He was one of my guys, and just didn't work out, obviously, with the whole pathway of Justin Fields. We knew this offense was going to be bad, but there was no one else to help Justin in this offense outside of Darnell Mooney. We thought this would be, a safety blanket in the middle of the field, but in reality, Justin didn't have any time to throw the ball. Better offensive line this year, better opportunity this year, another year within the system. The offensive, or they bring in DJ Moore, so hopefully Cole Kmet can kind of eat this year. I'm believing.
And if you think about it, right, still a young tight end, and the offense as a whole is improving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they added DJ Moore, but it's not as if anyone at the tight end, like Robert Tonyan's not going to compete. He'll have targets. He'll have opportunity, but Cole Kmet will still be the tight end 1. So it feels like he's a really cheap buy starting tight end on an offense that is unassuming at the moment that could take a next step. So, yeah, I don't have any problems with him in tier 5. I also have him there. I would also have Trey McBride here in tier 5. I'm not sure where you have him, but
yeah, I have him in here as well.
A lot of projecting, I'll say, with Trey McBride at this very moment. Before, I would say around January, I've brought him as someone that you guys could buy low on at the tight end spot. And the whole premise behind that take was this team is just going to keep getting younger and younger. They're going to continually make moves and focus on youth. Right now we see DeAndre Hopkins. He was released. Zach Ertz is coming off an ACL injury. Now, how many tight ends over the age of 32 have suffered an ACL and then recovered that elite form? And what incentive do the Cardinals have to ride it out with Ertz rather than give McBride a chance to be the starter on that team? So it's a little bit of projecting there.
For sure.
I'm not saying Zach Ertz will be bad, but we do have question marks around Zach, which could open up opportunities for Trey. Not only question marks around Zach, but also the direction of this team and what sort of opportunities are going to be given out here in 2023.
Yeah, completely agree.
I have one more tight end. Actually, I have 2 more tight ends in this tier.
Okay.
The first one that I would have is Dalton Schultz, and I don't know exactly where you would have him. And we'll talk about Dalton Schultz in a second. Or we can talk about right now. Do you have him in this tier 5?
I don't have him in the tier 5. I guess he's one of those guys you can put into the conversation of 19 tight ends, right? But he is my 19th tight end. I just kind of just had my 15, 16 tight end type guys. But once again, he would be in this tier in my tight end 5. Just wanted to kind of minimize those players.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. As far as Dalton Schultz goes, it's not like Dalton with Darren Waller is an older tight end. You know, he's only the age of 26. The issue with Dalton is that he didn't get the long-term commitment from his team. What I will say, though, is you look at that team in Houston, I think we could be underestimating the amount of work Dalton Schultz might get in the air this year.
We definitely could.
He's a proven receiving threat, and there's really not any proven receiving threats on that team right now.
Yeah.
And there's probably going to be people out there saying, what about Robert Woods? Is Robert Woods on this team? Is that right? I remember properly?
Robert Woods is on. Yes, Robert Woods is on this
There'll
team.
be people who be, slamming the table for Robert Woods. Robert Woods couldn't beat out Nick Westbrook-Ikini last year. Let's lower expectations for him.
Yeah.
I love Mechie. I think let's see what happens with Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson, but Dalton Schultz is one of the only proven, receiving threats in this offense, and he's going to give a really nice safety blanket to CJ Stroud, who is an accurate quarterback. So at the moment, I have Dalton Schultz ranked as my tight end 16 in Dynasty. If you look at points per game basis last year, it's a little bit difficult, right? Because you're going from the Dallas Cowboys offense to Houston, but if you look at points per game, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, he was the tight end 11, and then he finished the year as a tight end 10. Keep in mind, he only played 15 games, so he missed a couple, but still was on track, had quite a few touchdowns. Yeah. I think he deserves being in tier 5. You look at guys like McBride and Kmet, they're younger, but they've proven less. I would advocate for Schultz here in this tier 5.
Look, I'm not saying I don't want him in this tier. I just think that, coming in, he was in a top 5 powered offense. Dak Prescott there. He was clearly in a role where now you're kind of going with a rookie quarterback who I think we both believe is going to one day, hopefully, throughout his career, produce fantasy relevant talent around him. I just don't know about Dalton because we just didn't see the tight end position get targeted often in this offense as well. Maybe that's different now. Maybe it's a brand new
it's a completely different offense.
Exactly.
Different head coach, different quarterback.
Everyone's completely different, so things can change. But the history is not too well with, I would say Texans tight ends, at least in the past, I would say like 5 years.
I think that's why you brought Dalton in, though.
Maybe. So let's see what happens. I mean, he's still a young guy, right? We're 26 years old, 27 years old. So
I'll say this right now: like, if someone was to say, "Hey, would you swap Kmet for Schultz?" I would do it personally. Like, as much as I love Kmet, I would take Schultz because I think even just this year alone, Schultz is probably going to finish higher. Again, like, I hear you. The efficiency won't be there. I'm not expecting an efficient offense, but what I am expecting is a lot of opportunity, like a lot of targets. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a sleeper to be top 5 in targets at the tight end position this year, I think.
Definitely could be the case.
Almost like Evan Ingram last year, right? I mean, think of a tight end out of Jacksonville that you were ever really excited about. It's hard to think of a single one. You bring Evan Ingram in, he has a receiving, skill set, and the opportunities follow. So
yeah,
I'll advocate for him there. Sure. I only have one more tight end in this tier 5, and he's kind of at the end. You can make a case for him being in a lower tier. That's Luke Musgrave.
I have him in here as well.
Okay, cool. So we're on the same page with him. One of my favorite prospects in this tight end class, which is so deep. But as far as like who could maybe be the Travis Kelce of this class, to me that would be Luke Musgrave. Keep in mind, guys, I'm not saying Luke Musgrave is going to be Travis Kelce. I'm saying body build, athleticism, speed. I think Luke Musgrave could be in that category. He's a great contested catcher. At the Senior Bowl, he was clocked over 20 miles per hour. He's got the speed. He's got the build. And what often goes overlooked when scouting tight end prospects is people focus too much on production. The tight end position, more than running back, more than quarterback, more than wide receiver, production doesn't mean as much to this position than all the others. I mean, I've said this before, but go look at your favorite tight ends, see what sort of numbers they put up there last year at college. It's much more about these unteachable traits, your height, your speed, these things that you can't really teach. A coach can teach someone to play the tight end position, but do you have the speed to take it to the next level? Luke Musgrave does. He's a freak of an athlete, and I think if everything goes right, you could be looking at a very, very good tight end for fantasy purposes. So I just want to at least just show him some love there. Specifically like George Kittle. It's funny because people love George Kittle, and then they will trash on a prospect like Luke Musgrave. Go look at George Kittle's college production and tell me that production is something that is like the end all of tight end prospect of scouting tight ends. But anyway, that would be all that I have in this tier, unless you have someone else that you'd like to add.
No, this is all I have, obviously, with including Darren Waller there. One thing I would say, I know someone's going to comment, but I like Tucker Kraft better. I think Tucker Kraft should be right next. There's always an argument with Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave.
Sure.
I personally don't see, for me personally, I don't see the pathway for Tucker unless they have two tight ends set, which then we can have a different conversation. I don't envision that maybe happening. But just to kind of throw out that conversation,
I think it's a good conversation to have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, two different prospects. I think we've seen a little bit more success, even though Luke was injured at the time. We've seen a little bit more success in college. We see how he really performed well at the Senior Bowl compared to Tucker Kraft, where didn't really see much, to be honest, in the college profile. So let's see what happens with these two guys as well.
I feel like we should just honorable mention real quick a couple names. Like, guys, if we opened up this to top 24, there would be more tight ends to talk about. We just had to kind of keep it relatively rigid. There's names that you could argue should be in here. One of those Dallas tight ends, Jake Ferguson or Luke, but it's like, who do you trust this year?
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
Noah Fant. He's always had the athletic profile, never been that guy. Irv Smith, maybe. You could put Isaiah Likely in there. I struggle to see him getting opportunities. I know someone's going to yell at us about not having Cade Otton. We got yelled at a lot this last offseason for not having Cade Otton here.
For sure.
But let's move on to tier 4. And why don't I start with Darren Waller? I have Darren Waller in this tier 4. When I look at how this offense will operate, I don't see a receiving threat at the Giants that is going to stop Darren Waller from getting 100 targets. And I've talked about this before. Value in Dynasty, as much as people say, value youth, wait for young tight ends to figure it out, wait for them to produce. Most of the time, they're talking straight out of their ass. And as soon as a player starts producing, that's who they actually care about at the tight end spot. So I struggle to see a scenario in which we're not seeing 100 targets for Darren Waller. I think the receiving offense will funnel through him. And when you think about tight ends this year who are set up to absolutely smash, he is one of them. Like, it's almost what Mark Andrews was going through before the Ravens just added all of these options. Different player. Mark Andrews is younger. I think he's a better overall receiving threat. But as far as the options around Daniel Jones, I'm not a big Jalen Hyatt guy. I don't think Hyatt's going to be this dude who's getting 7-8 targets. He'll stretch the field. You brought in Paris Campbell. Has he ever been someone to be an alpha? No. Wan'Dale Robinson, to me, is not a prospect I've ever been obsessed with. There's just a lot of okay pieces. There's no one that I look at in this offense and think they're going to stop Darren Waller from getting the ball 7 times a game, 6 times a game, right? So I think we will see Darren Waller be he will be one of my favorite tight ends to draft in redraft leagues and season-long formats, and he's only 30. It's not like he's 33, right? I mean, it's not like he can still play for another 2 to 3 years, and we could still be waiting for Cole Kmet to break out. We could still be waiting for some of these rookie tight ends that we have probably ranked ahead of him to break out. So, I got Darren Waller ranked as my tight end 14 here in tier 4. I would love to advocate for him there, because we have seen Darren Waller do it over multiple seasons, right? It's not as if he's just a one-year wonder. He's done it like 2019, 2020, those 2 seasons. The dude was killing it. Over 1,100 receiving yards, over 115 targets. in both of those years, I think we could see a revival in his game here in New York, as he's really like the only options. If you guys have drafted Jordan Addison or Johnson or someone, I would be like a little bit lower on him, but there's nobody I see really competing for opportunity here in New York.
You know, obviously as a Giants fan, it's not that I don't believe in Darren Waller, especially in a dynasty perspective. It's just more like, okay, the past 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, he played half of the season in both of those 2 years. He needs to stay healthy. That is the biggest thing. And maybe they come in and somehow he does play a full season. But if he doesn't, it's back to this conversation. Well, he's 30 years old. He's injury prone.
Sure.
We need to move on. And that's why I have him in my tier 5. That's why okay, well, I can see a pathway where Cole Kmet finishes higher than Darren Waller. I can see a pathway where Trey McBride finishes higher than Darren Waller. Even Luke Musgrave, with his opportunity, obviously that's a little bit different because he's a rookie. But you get what I'm saying. Like, I'm not, once again, I don't like. It's not that I don't like. This is not an anti, Darren Waller take. This is more of I'm playing more cautious, and I think I would rather, maybe play the youth side and see what happens, because they can definitely walk away from him, and then you're like, well, Darren Waller going to another team, and he's
so let me ask you this then, just to play devil's advocate. Let's say he does end up remaining healthy the entire season. What would you anticipate his finish being in this Giants offense? What's his upside?
He would definitely be like a top 5. You mean in the tight end position? He'd definitely be a top 5 tight end.
So that's where I'm at. I'm thinking if he can stay healthy, he could be a top 5 tight end. And just looking at his contract, he's on contract for this year, for 24, for 25, for 26. He is technically not a free agent until he's 36 in 2027. I'm not saying he'll be great throughout that entire contract, but anyway, I think he should be at least in tier 4.
For sure. I'm happy to put him there, to be completely honest. I was just a little bit more skeptical on the health side.
And you're right. It could go either way. But also the tight ends that a lot of people have ranked ahead of him could also do nothing this year entirely. And then we're like, oh, maybe they'll break out next year. Who else do you have in this tier 4 then?
In this tier 4, I was on a different page here. I have Chig Okonkwo. I don't know where you have him.
Yeah, I would have him a little bit. I would have Darren and Chig a little bit higher than the other players in tier 4, but I'm listening.
Yeah,
tell me about Chig.
I have Chig Okonkwo here. I mean, a guy you kind of been advocating for. At least this offense you kind of been advocating for with Treylon Burks. They didn't bring in not one competition to kind of come in to get rid of Roberto Woods. Chig had a good second half of the season as well. And, you can kind of see the pathway there with Ryan Tannehill, Chig Okonkwo, Treylon Burks, and everyone there. So I'm definitely happy to take the opportunity and chance with Chig here.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I've been talking about Treylon Burks. I've been talking about Chig Okonkwo a lot this offseason, and that's because really, I don't see who the Titans have added to take away any sort of opportunities away from Chig Okonkwo. And check this out. If you look at tight ends who have a minimum of 30 targets last year, Chig Okonkwo was first in yards per reception. He was first in yards after the catch per reception, first in yards per route run. He had the 5th best contested catch rate. He had the first yards per reception, I already said that, and he had the 15th best ADOT. I mean, everything was pointing towards him, being a feature to end the season, which we see with a lot of rookies. They don't just out of the gates become this alpha, especially not with Mike Vrabel as their head coach. It takes some time to get that respect and to really learn the position. From weeks 12 to 18, Chig Okonkwo was a tight end 7. So I have him ranked a little bit higher, actually. He's my tight end 11. Where does he rank for you?
He is my tight end. He's my tight end 13 right now. So
yeah.
Cool.
It's right so we're close.
Yeah, it's close. It's just right on that edge there, I guess.
Who else do you have in this tier then?
In this tier, I also have Greg Dulcich. I don't know if you have him here.
Dulcich, yeah. I got Greggy in there.
Big old Greggy. What can we say? Sean Payne coming in. Russell Wilson has always produced. has always been a top 10 tight end or quarterback, and has always produced top 10, fantasy relevant either receivers or tight ends in the past, right? And I think that's what's really exciting here with Greg. New offensive coordinator, new head coach, and I think this is exactly what we want to see for Greg. And we saw that part of the season where, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy either was missing time on and off the field. Greg stepped up here for them, and if that is the case this year again, then Greg could be a good pickup.
Here's what I'll just say quickly. I think people would probably be commenting this right now. Russell Wilson has never really made tight ends very fantasy relevant.
Right.
So I will just step in there and just say that.
I guess in that sense, you're right. So maybe I should correct myself and say he has produced fantasy relevant people around him.
Receivers in general?
Maybe not in the tight end position, but has produced fantasy relevant. So I guess that's what I wanted to really say.
Yeah, no, I hear you there for sure. I mean, I think if we look after the bye week, he was much, much better. And again, with these rookie tight ends, and really any rookie in general, you need to look more towards the back half trends of the season rather than the season as a whole, because I would be shocked if any tight end ever just day one starts being an absolute monster for their team. But if you look at after the bye week for this team, Greg Dulcich started averaging, 7 points per game. So he started getting up there. I am a little bit lower on Dulcich than the average person. Not that I dislike him, but I would prefer Darren Waller over Greg Dulcich at this moment. I would prefer Chigakonkwo over Greg Dulcich at this moment. I just I think there's an easier case for me to make for them. And as crazy as it sounds, I'll add someone to this tier. I think I even prefer Evan Ingram over Greg Dulcich at the moment. So I would have him kind of towards the back. But again, they're all in the same tier. So it's not as if I miss out on Darren Waller in a dynasty draft, I'm looking at Greg and I'm like, that's fine. Greg Dulcich is still there. But Evan Ingram, if he signed to a long-term deal, I think everyone would probably be...
It's a different conversation.
All in on him. It's just... Really, the concern is, okay, well, will he be the guy for this team long term? Finishes as the tight end 5 last year, had 98 targets, so almost over that 100 target mark. And on points per game, he was a tight end 7, I think, 7 or 8. So he was putting up big numbers. In fact, I remember in my redraft league, he was someone that I picked up off the waiver wire last year, and he ended up helping me win a championship. He's only 28, so it's not as if he's again, in his 30s, early 30s. But yeah, I would advocate for Evan Ingram at minimum to be in tier 4. However you want to rank these guys, you can make a case. But just for me, when I look at the tight end position, I can make a much easier case personally for Waller, Chig, and Evan Ingram than I can for Greg Dulcich. That's just how I'm personally seeing it at the moment.
For sure. I definitely, that was the next person I was going to talk about was Evan Ingram and all the things that you kind of hinted. Longer contract, no doubt. I think if he had a contract extension, 3-4 year contract extension, I think we can even be talking about him in tier 3, honestly. And then we feel a little bit more comfortable. Also, one of the first years we've seen him outside of his rookie year play a full season, right? So I think that's also pretty big for Evan Ingram.
Okay, who else do you have in this tier 4?
I also have a rookie here. Sam Laporta.
Okay. Yep. I have 2 rookies here, Sam Laporta and Michael Mayer.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have both of them?
I do have both of them. So yeah, we can talk about it. Look, both of these guys walking into good opportunities, right? Let's start off with Sam Laporta going to the Detroit Lions offense. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson is no longer there. He left, that offense with a lot of targets, a lot of vacancies, especially with Jameson Williams going to be missing the first 6 weeks of the season. You still have a Amon-Ra St. Brown. You bring in Jahmyr Gibbs. There's going to be opportunity for Sam Laporta. When is that opportunity going to be? I would say it can either be in the first 6 weeks or the last 6 weeks of the season. We don't really know. But I think in the long term, this is a guy that they wanted. This is a, Coach Campbell's, ideal tight end in this position, which I really, really like. So I'm really excited for Sam Laporta. And then just to talk on Michael Mayer, and then you can kind of talk about both of those guys, is Michael Mayer going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Darren Waller with all those vacant targets. Can he stay healthy? Jimmy G is in question right now. Devontae Adams, a lot of rumors, talks, questions. Maybe he stays, maybe he does go. Whatever the case may be, there's also 100+ vacant targets there for Michael Mayer in this Las Vegas Raiders offense, and we just got to wait and see what that looks like. And we've seen the history with the head coach, with Gronk, with Aaron Hernandez in the history, and I think that's exactly what we can see, that type of hopefully that type of opportunity and offense coming in with Michael Mayer with the Raiders.
Yeah. I definitely have Mayer and Laporta in this tier. I think I would have them lower than yourself. I imagine they're at the top of the tier for you.
I have Evan Ingram ahead of those two guys.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how I would line up my tier 4.
And look, I think it's more important to look at the tier rather than nitpick individual rankings. But I guess I just want to say, as a whole, I'm a little bit lower on the rookie tight ends in general than, let's say, your average person. I wrote an article about it over on Flock Fantasy. Again, pinned a link in the comment if you want to sign up. The 2-day free trial. Use our code for 30% off land.
Yeah.
But I wrote an article about lowering people's expectations for rookie tight ends. It happens every single year. Tight ends are hyped up as rookies, and they typically don't produce in year one. Now, there's one tight end this year that I think could break that mold. We've seen Pat Fryermuth break that mold. But overall, I mean, if you look at top 12 seasons over the past decade, for first-round picks, 22% of first-round picks from the tight end spot have been top 12 at their position as a rookie. You've seen 0 second-round picks and 0 third-round picks finish top 12 as a rookie. And that's where Laporta and Michael Mayer are. So unless they're going to break the mold of the last decade of, tight ends in production, then I'm a little bit lower personally. I have lower expectations. And then I looked at the average fantasy finish for rookie tight ends. Again, in the last decade, from 2012 to 2022, first-round tight ends who are drafted, they're averaging the tight end 25 finish in fantasy football. Second-round tight ends who are drafted are averaging the tight end 44 finish. And then third-round tight ends are averaging tight end 74. So I have lower expectations for those two guys. I still think they're going to have incredible years or careers, but I'm just not so certain that it happens out of the gate. I'm not saying you are, Badake, but just people in general who might be like, why is Zach talking down on these rookie tight ends? I like them. I'm just trying to not bet against history. That's typically so strong. Okay, so talk to me about tier 3. Who have you got here?
Yeah, so one of the guys I have in here is David Njoku.
I'm with you. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, he got a contract extension. Obviously, now he's getting Deshaun Watson. He finished as a top tight end this past year, and I'm really excited. I mean, he was tight end 11 this past year, and I'm really excited for this offense to kind of take the next step. Once again, Deshaun Watson only played the second half of the season, the last 6 games, if I'm not mistaken. Jacoby Brissett the rest of the games in the beginning of the season, and now Deshaun Watson with a guy that has produced, once again, fantasy relevant options all around him. David Njoku can eat. This offense does get better without a doubt with Deshaun Watson. And I'm excited. I'm excited for David Njoku and the longevity that we're going to be seeing here for the next couple of years with Deshaun Watson.
Still a young tight end. You're right. Finished tight end 11. He was tight end 8 in points per game, so he was even better in a points per game scenario over that 10-point PPR threshold. And we saw him good. We saw him be good for fantasy with Deshaun Watson. We didn't see much of that with Amari Cooper. We did see it with David Njoku in some small opportunities. So I'm all aboard. I like David Njoku there. He's just, to me, he's one of the most disrespected tight ends in football. Like, I think he's just a very good tight end. I would also, in tier 3, I would have Pat Fryermuth here.
Yep.
Love Pat Fryermuth. I think if you swapped Pat Fryermuth and Evan Ingram, it could be absolute wheels up. If you swapped Pat Fryermuth, let's say, and you put him, I don't know, in Philly, if you put Pat Fryermuth in Buffalo, like, it'd be hard to not have him much higher than this. But in Pittsburgh, we're relying on Kenny Pickett to make Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, George Pickens, and Pat Fryermuth all fantasy relevant. So I think the ceiling is just slightly capped unless Kenny Pickett becomes something that I don't think he can become, right? Like a top 5 to 10 quarterback in the NFL. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but I just think the ceiling is slightly capped. Very young tight end, proven production, but I'm not sure that there can be 3 relevant receiving options there in Pittsburgh. And then I also have Dallas Goedert at the top of this tier, and I have Dalton Kincaid right in between him and Pat Freiermuth. So Kincaid is my tight end 7, Goddard is my tight end 6. And I'll just say quickly, I know I talked about lowering expectations for rookie tight ends. If anyone in this class is going to break that mold that I told you guys about earlier, it's going to be Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid, I think we should look at him a little bit more as again, I have lower expectations, but we should look at him a little bit more as a slot receiver rather than, an inline tight end. He didn't play much inline tight end at Utah. He was much more in the slot and out wide as a receiver. And I think we all understand why the Bills drafted Dalton Kincaid. Like, they need a real receiving threat. And if you hear Josh Allen and the GM and the coach talk about Dalton Kincaid, I said this on draft night, but I was like, I think Travis Kelce has hurt them so much. I think they want their own. I think they want 100%. Some sort of elite receiving threat like Kincaid. And yeah, maybe I have him too high. I'm eating my own tail here, but I think if anyone's going to have another Pat Freiermuth season as a rookie, it's going to be Dalton Kincaid here in tier 3. Let me know what you disagree with, if you want to add anyone or what you see differently.
Yeah, no, for sure. So the difference that I see here for me would be George Kittle. So I would have George Kittle where Dallas Goedert is at right now.
Okay.
I actually have Dallas Goedert ahead of George Kittle.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is not once again inside George Kittle take. I think it's just getting to that point for me where I kind of want to move on. Right? I kind of want to move on from everything. He's 29 years old. Not saying that he's going to be irrelevant, but who's going to be the quarterback? Is that Trey? I think if Trey comes in, it's a different offense. We haven't seen the history with this offense, and it feels like it's leading that way right now. If it's Brock Purdy, I feel a little bit more comfortable, but how long is Brock Purdy really going to be in this offense, and how long is he going to have this, I guess, Linsanity type run, right? I mean, whatever that looks like. But it's not that I don't like George Kittle. It's more that, okay, we're looking at the quarterback. Situation. We're looking at the injury history as well. And I think I'd rather have Dallas Goedert and the longevity, especially with Jalen Hurts here. And he may not be the number one. I guess if you look at this offense, put them back to back, right? I want Dallas over George. He's the younger tight end. He has the long-term contract quarterback, and he's still in the same position like George Kittle has their two number ones, or number 1 and number 2, in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and then George Kittle has Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. So I think I'd rather have the youth. I'd rather have kind of where this team is trending right now with the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's how I feel with Dallas Goedert.
My rebuttal, because I hear you. In fact, I brought Dallas Goedert as a buy low, a week ago? I'm with you. I like Goedert. I think I still prefer George Kittle though. And this to me is just, again, I think sometimes we think too far in Dynasty. Let me ask you this, when does George Kittle stop being an elite receiving threat at the tight end position? At 29, I would give him at least another 4 years, maybe like 4 or 5 years, maybe. And like in the landscape of Dynasty, he's not like a completely inferior talent to Travis Kelce. If he can kind of follow that footsteps and, be this, let's say he's 31 and he's still putting up top 5 seasons, I think his value is going to hold true longer. I mean, think about, you talked about the quarterbacks, but think about last year. Last year was a disaster, right? Trey Lance comes in, comes out. Jimmy G comes in, comes out. Brock Purdy. I mean, we're rolling through quarterbacks, right? Like we're rolling through Fast and Furious movies. And George Kittle still ends up as a tight end 3 on the season. And in points per game, he was the tight end 2. Only Travis Kelce scored more points per game than George Kittle. So to me, I hear you. I'm trying to navigate that fine line between thinking about the future, but not overthinking production at a position where production is hard to come by. So I don't think it's egregious to have Goddard over Dallas or to have Goddard over Kittle, but I would personally have Kittle over Dallas Goedert at this moment. Sure. In fact, I would have Kittle in tier 2 and I would have Goddard in tier 3. But to meet you in the middle, I'd be happy to pop him into tier 3. I just personally have him in tier 2. I think he's a step above these other tight ends personally.
Yeah, and I guess just to rebuttal one more time there, and think about that thought process when we were going through that. Okay, we were saying Trey Lance, we can't wait for Trey. We just don't know how this is going to work out the first couple weeks in his fantasy targets, right? And then Jimmy G comes in, George Kittle, the revival, right? Like, we can't wait for George Kittle. And then Brock Purdy comes in. We had no idea what was going to happen. We weren't expecting him to be good at all. And he was really targeting everyone, which kind of helped the community as well. So I think, that roller coaster of question marks that could be coming in, week in and week out, every single week coming into next year, I may just want the security a little bit more with Dallas. And I think maybe that's where I'm leaning, the security. And we have to remember, Dallas was a top 4 tight end before that injury, right? He was on pace without a doubt to finish.
I 100% agree. Like, I brought a take on him a couple weeks ago. I'm
so and he, like, in points per game, I'm pretty sure he was like top 5 within that stretch as well. So he was definitely eating. I think if we had to put them back to back, George has the longevity of the fantasy relevant, profile. If I'm looking at the whole situation overall, I want Dallas Goedert as the talent in the situation. Right. So
I hear you. I mean, look, I think there's a case to be made for Goddard. I think you could expect some touchdown regression for Kittle. Overall, again, I would have him in a tier above. I'm happy to meet you on this one and have Dallas Goedert as the top of that tier.
Yeah.
Again, just to try and come together with these community or consensus rankings rather. Okay, here in tier 2, I have 2 players, and I don't know how this is going to go, but this is where I would have TJ Hawkinson, and this is where I would have Travis Kelce.
Yeah, perfect.
Same page?
Perfect.
Okay.
Same page, yes.
Because we've spent so much time on this video, I mean, do we really need to argue why TJ Hawkinson and Travis Kelce are good? I hope you guys, at this point, I think we can all agree that they're worthy of being here in tier 2. Some people might be upset. Travis Kelce should be tier 1. And my tier 1 is where I'd have Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews. And to me, the reason I can't put Kelce here, look, if you're competing, then you would have Kelce in tier 1, right? If you're competing, you're a win now team in Dynasty, there's not a tight end you probably want more than Travis Kelce. But that's not Dynasty. It's not just redraft. Not everyone has that same strategy. So when it comes to value, there are half of the teams or maybe more in your league who Travis Kelce would actually hurt their team, would hurt their strategy. So the road will stop at some point. And if you're a competing team, you hold on to him and you're left, whenever he dies, you're left with him in your hand and you give him a proper burial. But like at the moment, I'm still like, if I can flip Kelce for Andrews or Pitts and the rest of my team is still good and I'm competing, I'm doing it. If I can flip Kelce for Andrews or Pitts and I'm a rebuilding team, I'm doing it. So it's not to disrespect Kelce. I love Kelce. I'm a Chiefs fan. But at the same time, when I talked about Kittle being 29, we're talking about Travis Kelce, who is going to be, 34 this year? So it does fall off at some point. And I understand, hold on to him if you're a competing team. But still, overall, if I'm in a startup and I am just building a hybrid, a productive struggle, a rebuilding team, then I would not prioritize Kelce over Andrews or Pitts personally.
Yeah, we're on the same page throughout the whole way. No need to argue there. One thing I do want to talk about, because I've kind of been questioning, and I know you're going to advocate for this person, and I think I've seen a lot of people on Twitter or seen a lot of people in the comments. When is Kyle Pitts really going to break out? When is that really going to happen? I get it. He's young, 22 years old, the quarterback with Desmond Ridder. What if they're at mid-team again, and they don't have the opportunity to get a Caleb or May, or they don't necessarily use him the right way? How much longer should we truly hold on to Kyle Pitts? Because we've seen, not generational talent like Kyle Pitts come in the NFL draft, but we've seen first round pick tight ends that probably don't break out until they're like 27, 26. That's another 4-6 more years for Kyle Pitts. Are we really going to be waiting 6 years to really wait for him to break out? When when do we kind of move forward? If this year Kyle Pitts is not a top 15 tight end, what's the
Yeah, like
what
if
do
he's
we
not
do?
top 15, it will obviously be a disappointment.
Right.
Okay, so so here's what I'll say just quickly. Something that I get really irked about, which and you're kind of alluding to it, not totally, but I see it in comments. I saw it in a comment yesterday.
Yeah.
I often hear this statement, how long are we going to have Kyle Pitts ranked as a tight end 1 and he hasn't done anything? Like, and that's kind of what you're alluding to, around in some sort of way.
I know someone's going to comment and say that.
And
so.
I cannot understand. This is the definition of recency bias. Yeah, last year was a bad year. Marcus Mariota is probably the worst quarterback for any receiving option ever in the last decade. I don't think you could find a worse quarterback for your receiving tight end than Marcus Mariota. Kyle Pitts led the league in, I think, overthrown balls to the tight end position. But to the whole narrative, like, when is Kyle Pitts ever going to break out? When is he going to do something? It's like, I'm struggling to understand this narrative from people. Guys, as a 21-year-old tight end, Kyle Pitts, in the over 100 years of the history of the NFL, this great game that we love, over 100 years, only one person has more receiving yards and by a thread than Kyle Pitts as a rookie. That is Mike Ditka in 1961. As a rookie, Kyle Pitts was setting records, over 1,000 yards. The same quarterback that went to Indianapolis and absolutely tanked it to give them a top 5 pick in Matt Ryan. Kyle Pitts, over 1,000 receiving yards as a 21-year-old tight end. When people say, when is he going to break out? What do you mean? In 100 years, only one tight end has more receiving yards as a rookie than Kyle Pitts. How about receptions? Only 2 tight ends have more receptions than Kyle Pitts as a rookie. When is he going to break out? He's, 22 years old now?
Yeah.
Dalton Kincaid is already older than him. Dalton Kincaid is going to be 24 by the time the season starts. I mean, he has already broken out. What's funny is if Dalton Kincaid puts up these stats that Kyle Pitts does, people are going to start making a case for him as a tight end 1, even though Kyle Pitts is younger. And he just did it. It's different offense, different situation. I mean, like, he's historic rookie season, and people are asking, when is he going to break out? I mean, please tell me that you've watched Falcons games and that you've watched Marcus Mariota. I mean, there's not a worse analytically or with the eyeball test quarterback for a tight end than Marcus Mariota. I think the narrative, personally, obviously you can see I'm passionate about it. I'm a Kyle Pitts guy. Call me whatever you want. Right. But that narrative really irks me because it's the definition of what I always talk about in Dynasty. People's mind spans are so quick. They just, what has he done? He hasn't done anything. What do you mean? He almost made history. So,
okay, that's fine. Once again, I just wanted to bring the conversation because I know someone's going to comment.
Yeah.
Last thing, because once again, I know someone's going to say, if he doesn't finish as a top 15, top 20 tight end this year, would you move on? Would you advise somebody to move on? Because I think we will get a lot of question marks on that.
I wouldn't move on. No, I mean you could definitely make a case as to who is the first tight end in Dynasty. Mm-hmm. When should you draft him? What is his proper value relative to the market? But no, I wouldn't move on from him because he'll be 23 years old.
Sure, say less.
And he's still this incredible athlete. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway. Look, I'm passionate about Pitts, and if he doesn't finish top 15, top 20, you're right. It will be a disappointment. I can't argue against that. But Ritter, funnily enough, they were already throwing the ball at a higher rate with Desmond Ritter to end the season. Let's see what happens here in 2023. But, all it takes is one change, and we see offseason changes all the time.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks are changing like it's the NBA. It takes one change for Kyle Pitts to absolutely take off to the moon. And if you're going to sell him now, I just think you're going to miss out on that personally.
I hear you.
But look, I'm not going to be upset if someone wants to make a case for Mark Andrews or Kelsey or Hawkinson as their one if they feel that way. But do us a favor, guys. Go ahead and drop a like. This is a longer video. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content, and we'll see you in the next one. All love.
Love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.